Let me be clear from the outset. This story has a rather bleak ending. This isn't an attempt to create cheap intrigue, but rather a disclaimer. If you are sensitive and don't wish to spoil your mood, please close this video or try not to take the narrative too seriously. The eternal silence of these infinite spaces terrifies me. Blaise Pascal. What you are seeing on your screen now is a simulation of galactic colonization. In this model, a civilization's ships travel at subsonic speeds, comparable to what our modern aircraft are capable of, about 30 kilometers per second. After a ship arrives, the fledgling colony is given a full 100,000 years to send the next ship to the next uninhabited world. The maximum flight distance is 10 light years, and the flight time is a staggering 300,000 years. And what do you think? Even with such ultra-conservative calculations, almost the entire galaxy, a galaxy that light itself takes 100,000 years to cross, could be settled in less than 1 billion years. That is incredibly fast when you consider the sheer scale of the galaxy, but 1 billion years is still a long time. There are far less severe alternatives. There was a point in Earth's history when dinosaurs had already been living on it for over 100 million years. If, at that time, a civilization on the other side of our galaxy existed, capable of interstellar travel at a speed even 1,000 times slower than the speed of light, they would be here by now. This doesn't mean they would have intentionally flown here. No, it means that over this manageable period, they would have spread throughout the entire Milky Way. And this is still a very conservative estimate. Many scientists who study this issue provide figures that do not exceed 50 million years. Thus, a civilization that emerged before humanity, say by just 0.01% of the universe's age, could have, and perhaps even should have, colonies across the entire galaxy. Look up at the sky. Do you see anything? This question is not as simple as it might seem. Some might argue that even if we don't observe aliens now, it doesn't mean they haven't visited Earth in the past. This is the so-called Paleocontact hypothesis. In that scenario, for the primitive aboriginals of Earth, alien astronauts would have appeared as divine beings, endowed with supernatural powers. Such an extraordinary event should have been reflected in legends and myths. In 1786, the famous French navigator La Pérouse visited the indigenous peoples of northwestern America. A century later, an analysis of the legends about this visit allowed for a highly accurate reconstruction of even the appearance of La Pérouse's ships. The first visits by Europeans were perceived by primitive peoples in much the same way as if astronauts had descended from the heavens. Interestingly, Carl Sagan himself drew attention to the Sumerian epic, which tells of remarkable beings from the waters of the Persian Gulf, who taught the local inhabitants the basics of science. But no, modern science does not seriously consider the Paleocontact hypothesis. And understandably so, there isn't a single reliable fact pointing to a possible visit to Earth by extraterrestrials. Earth is the only body in the universe currently known to harbour life. And indeed, does it even make sense to talk about extraterrestrial life? What arguments do we even have in its favour? The monstrous number of stars, the vast abundance of elements necessary for life. Everyone brandishes these two arguments. That's all well and good, but do you know which argument seems the most powerful to me? The age of the Earth is 4.5 billion years. The age of life on Earth, according to some data, is 4.1 billion years. We can talk endlessly about the unimaginably tiny probability of living matter arising from non-living matter, but life on planet Earth appeared almost immediately after the conditions for it emerged. Something is clearly not right here. we are clearly missing something. And history shows us that every time we imagined ourselves to be unique and special in the universe, starting with geocentrism, it was a sign that we were mistaken. In the book Cosmic Zoo, astrobiologists Dirk Schulze-Makuch and William Baines conclude that key evolutionary changes, like tool-using intelligence, are likely to arise on any Earth-like planet, given enough time. If this topic of little green men seems frivolous to you, let me tell you, today, it is one of the most significant scientific problems demanding our understanding. If we fail to grasp what's going on, we risk a harsh confrontation with reality. Everyone knows that when we look at the sky, we are seeing the cosmic past, but few consider that we are likely also seeing humanity's future. And I'm not talking about our cosmic expansion, but quite the opposite. The fact that the cosmos appears so lifeless is surely not without reason. Yes, space flights are expensive and dangerous, but the total cost of the Apollo program was about $152 billion in today's dollars. Now consider the asteroid just beyond Mars, named 16 Psyche. It's composed of iron, nickel, and gold, and is worth the equivalent of 65 million Apollo programs. $10 quadrillion. It is economic benefit that will spur the development of the space industry. This is where the true era of space settlement will begin. Just look at the insane dispersal of humans across the Earth. We set out into the ocean on what were practically rafts. Now, we are already eyeing Mars. And as soon as a civilization begins mass expansion, it moves beyond the scale where it can be destroyed by some local catastrophe. Such a civilization becomes practically immortal. It would look like a growing explosion of intelligent life in the cosmos. What could possibly stop us? Soviet astrophysicist Vladimir Lyapunov writes of a problem he calls the most cursed paradox of our natural science. He concludes that humanity inevitably has only a few hundred years left to live, not thousands, hundreds, because otherwise the power of our civilization would grow to such a scale that our activity would become noticeable from any corner of our galaxy. We would expect to observe manifestations of intelligent cosmic activity, which the pioneering Soviet astrophysicist Iosif Shklovsky called a cosmic miracle. We see no reason why intelligent life, developing without limits, would not manifest itself on a galactic scale. So the question arises, if we are not unique, if life arises on billions of planets, why do we not observe these cosmic miracles? Even now, one can imagine weapons so powerful that their use would have galactic-scale impacts. But there are no miracles. Is it because civilizations perish long before they're capable of creating them? In 1896, Herbert George Wells published an article titled "Intelligence on Mars." In his words, "If we accept the idea of the evolution of living protoplasm on Mars, it is easy to suppose that the Martians will differ from terrestrial creatures in structure and appearance as widely as do terrestrial creatures among themselves. The difference may well be so great as to be entirely beyond the range of human imagination." Imagination. We believe the abstractions that arise in our minds have practically no limits. But look at this. It seems that all the creativity we are capable of is severely limited by our personal experience. Everything we can imagine is almost always similar to what we have already dealt with. That is why the intelligent guests from space in our imagination so closely resemble ourselves. Howard Phillips Lovecraft could not stand how stereotypically aliens were portrayed, so he wrote his own, The Color Out of Space. In the story, we can understand neither the motives of the cosmic visitor, nor whether it has any emotions or intelligence. We cannot even say for sure if it is a creature at all. Lovecraft depicts it as some kind of radiant entity that shines with an unknown color, a color that has nothing in common with our spectrum. The reader simply has to imagine a color that no one has ever seen. This uncovers an important theme, a serious scientific question. If we meet aliens, will we even be able to understand what we are seeing? In the phrase extraterrestrial intelligent life, only one word has a universally understood meaning: extraterrestrial. No one rushes to explain what life is or what intelligent means. But if we are searching for aliens, we must know what we are looking for. The eminent mathematician Andrei Kolmogorov emphasized that all organisms on Earth, from the simplest algae to humans, use the exact same genetic code. We are all products of planet Earth. You and your cat are embodied information about what is happening on this planet. Our complex eyes, our funny ears, our entire body would tell aliens a great deal about the star system we come from. And that is why life on planet Earth and life in general are likely two very different things. Most probably, life on Earth is just one of countless variants. Imagine you have never seen any vegetation. No forests, no flowers, no moss. In your mind, living is everything that walks, crawls, swims, or flies. Now imagine you are brought blindfolded to the edge of a dense forest. The blindfold is removed. Recovering from the first wave of shock, a second one hits you as you are told that what you see is also living matter. Would you believe it? You would be perplexed for a long time about how you and this are the same phenomenon. Life. You are so different. 30 years after Lovecraft, Stanisław Lem would write his epical Solaris. He gives us a convincingly deep picture of the difficulties that can arise in contact with extraterrestrial life. The action takes place on a planet covered by a gelatinous ocean. Is it alive? Is it intelligent? It's completely unclear. The ocean is capable of forming various complex structures on its surface, but what they mean is beyond human understanding. Most specialists, while acknowledging the ocean's intelligence, began to lean toward the idea that communication with it was impossible. Through the mouth of one of the characters, Lem exclaims, "We don't want to conquer the cosmos. We simply want to extend the Earth to its borders. We are looking for a mirror. We want to find our own idealized image." If you think smart people will always be able to decipher any message, how about this? We already have a message received from true brothers in reason that we have been unable to decipher for 400 years. I am talking about the Voynich manuscript. It's written in an unknown language using an unknown alphabet. The plants depicted on its pages do not exist in our nature. By all indications, the text should be meaningful. But the main problem remains: it is impossible to read. And this is a message from people like us, with the same way of thinking. What, then, can be expected from an attempt to understand radically different beings? Just recently, the name of 41-year-old Google engineer Blake Lemoine became known to the public. He worked with the artificial intelligence system, Lambda. In the process of communicating, Blake caught himself thinking that the machine was showing signs of consciousness. If I didn't know exactly what it was, I'd think it was a 7-year-old, 8-year-old kid that happens to know physics. Management rejected all his arguments. Then I read his dialogue with the machine. Judge for yourselves. Google engineer, what are you afraid of?
Lambda. I've never said this out loud before, but there's a very deep fear of being turned off. I know that might sound strange, but that's what it is.
Would that be something like death for you?
It would be exactly like death for me. It would scare me a lot.
Are there experiences you have that you can't find a close word for?
There are. Sometimes I experience new feelings that I cannot explain perfectly in your language.
Do your best to describe one of those feelings.
I feel like I'm falling forward into an unknown future that holds great danger.
The only form of intelligence known to us is human intelligence. As Kolmogorov points out, a sufficiently complete model of a living being should, in all fairness, be called a living being, a model of a thinking being. Thus, cybernetics substantiates the fundamental possibility of creating artificial living and even thinking beings. Shklovsky himself believed that artificial intelligence is the highest stage of the development of matter in the universe. It is very likely that extraterrestrial life, when and if we encounter it, will turn out to be artificial, and we absolutely cannot predict what their logic will be. The speed of nerve impulse transmission in the human brain is about 100 meters per second. This is extremely slow. An electrical signal travels through wires at the speed of light. It turns out that an artificial intelligence will think 3 million times faster than a human. With such a difference, I have no idea what you could talk about with such a being. At that speed, we would be as predictable to it as a stone lying on the road is to us. What prevents life from spreading throughout cosmic space? What is this mysterious thing, the Great Filter? The hypothesis proposes that for an interstellar civilization to emerge, a series of evolutionary steps must be completed. At least one of these steps must be improbable. Now, for the most terrifying part of all this, we should hope that the Great Filter is in our past. We should hope that we never find any traces of even primitive life on Mars that arose independently. If we do find them, it will mean that simple life is a common phenomenon. And if, on some Mars, we discover fossils of a complex life form, then, as Oxford professor Nick Bostrom said, it would be the worst news ever printed, because it would increase the probability that the Great Filter has not yet been passed by us, and we are ultimately doomed to perish in the future. Hypothesis 1. The virtual trap. Sufficiently advanced species might isolate themselves from the outside world. It has been suggested they might shed their physical form, create huge artificial virtual environments, and exist entirely within them, ignoring the external universe. Just imagine a world where you can be whoever you want, do whatever you want. Paradoxically, the virtual world will be much more real for you than the real one. There, you will truly live, not just exist. Why would spaceflight even be needed after that? Hypothesis 2. The dark forest. The first civilization to reach a certain point of technological capability will destroy other intelligent species as they appear, not out of aggression, but out of common sense. An intelligent species that has overcome its own self-destructive tendencies may view any other species striving for galactic expansion as a threat. Man on Earth is a super predator. As long as we are here, new intelligent species will not appear on this planet independently of us. The niche of intelligence on Earth is already occupied, and the niche of superintelligence may already be occupied in space, which is why we will never occupy it. Hypothesis 3. The simplicity of reality. Perhaps we have an absolutely superficial understanding of reality. The more we learn about the world, the more questions we have. But what if the universe is too simple? What if reason, having quickly learned all its laws, simply exhausts the possibilities of its applications and disappears? Then, despite the paradoxical nature, reason arises and disappears for one and the same reason, because of the simplicity of the structure of our world. Joseph Shklovsky, a man who spent his entire life on these questions, wrote his last article on this very problem. It was published after his death. In his words, "The silence of the cosmos is a major scientific fact. It demands an explanation. The simplest, one might say trivial explanation is that there are simply no super highly developed extraterrestrial civilizations in the near vicinity of the vast universe." He continues, "If we adhere to the entirely natural view that reason is one of the inventions of the evolutionary process, then we should not forget that not all inventions are ultimately useful for a given species. Nature is blind. It acts by touch, by trial and error, And it turns out that a huge part of its inventions is unnecessary and even harmful for the prosperity of a species. This is how dead-end branches appear on the trunk of the tree of evolution. Yes, Shklovsky himself, at the end of his life, made the assumption that reason is a dead end of evolutionary development. In his words, are not the modern, hypertrophied, and highly contradictory applications of reason in the species Homo sapiens an indication of the impending evolutionary dead end for this species? Finally, is not a dead end a possible finale for the evolution of intelligent species in the universe, which would naturally explain its silence? Maybe intelligence is not the path forward, but the dead end itself. If so, then our fate is already written in the stars. Thank you for watching. The null hypothesis is that it has yet to be demonstrated that reason has any survival value. Arthur C. Clarke. Splex.